Welcome back to another episode of Al Shakal Al Sadlana, Our Middle East, a critical moment in the history of the modern Middle East. Trump's 20-point plan, now 19-point plan. Is it a peace plan or is it a death pact between Hamas and its Middle Eastern sponsors, Turkey and Qatar, Muslim Brotherhood loyalists? This is not the way it seems. The West, perhaps, has been bamboozled once again, or threatened to be tricked once again, by Hamas's deception, warfare, disinformation. This is jihad in the diplomatic context. And there's no one better to discuss this than my dear friend and partner for so many decades, Khalid Abu Tuameh, the Middle East's greatest analyst on the Arab world and particularly the Palestinian affairs. Khalid, there is a lot to unpack here because what the West is hearing and seeing does not reflect what is going on the ground. Assassinations, torture, executions of scores of Gazans by Hamas, reasserting its control in every neighborhood in Gaza, while at the same time the United States and President Donald J. Trump are announcing the end of war and the beginning of what they think is a regional peace and stability plan. But in my view, Khalid, nothing will stabilize, nothing will become secure in the Middle East until Gaza is finally resolved. And right now, it looks like that Gaza is anything but resolved, in fact, even more chaotic than on the 6th of October, 2023.
You know, Dan, it's ironic that while President Trump and Arab leaders and other people were talking about peace, a new era for the Middle East, stability, cooperation, de-radicalization, at the same time that we were hearing these terms and words in Jerusalem and in Sharm el-Sheikh, Hamas was rounding up scores of Palestinians, probably dozens or if not hundreds, torturing, interrogating, and executing many of them. This is a very dramatic development. Why? Because it shows that we have gone back to October 6. We are back to the pre-October 7 era, where Hamas continues to rule. And these public executions are meant to send a message, not only to Palestinians, but also to others, specifically Arab countries that think that they can come into Gaza without Hamas's approval. Also to the Palestinian Authority, that this is the fate of all the collaborators. Let's not forget, Hamas never changed its opinion about the Palestinian Authority and President Mahmoud Abbas. For them, for Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, President Mahmoud Abbas are traitors. These are people who, are not engaged in the armed struggle against Israel. These are people who continue to abide by the Oslo Accords in Hamas's view, so they are traitors. And that's why we should look at what's happening over here as a very serious development that does not bode well for the future of Gaza. The IDF continues to control half of Gaza, but Hamas controls the other half. This is what we are seeing. And I keep asking myself, when I see these public executions, when I see mass Hamas men on the streets of Gaza, of the Gaza Strip, what happened to all those plans we used to hear about? The clan plan. Remember the plan to establish...
Call it the Hebron First plan.
Yeah, okay. The Hebron First, then
in the West Bank,
we were told
it's
going to happen in Gaza.
Right.
The clans will rise and they will erupt against Hamas, and Hamas will be disarmed. I'm sorry, but so far I see that the only parties that are being disarmed are Hamas's rivals in Gaza, and again, this is not good.
Disarmed and beheaded.
Disarmed, beheaded, shot. They're even shooting women now, mothers, children. I hear from many reports from people in Gaza, and they call me and they say, "Look, this is awful. People are scared. We never thought it would be like this. And, Dan, they're asking one simple question. Where are all the pro-Palestine protesters who were condemning Israel during the war and are now silent when Hamas is committing atrocities against its own people? Hamas's crackdown, or Hamas claims that it's cracking down on suspected collaborators and criminals. What evidence is Hamas providing?
It's like calling Jews Nazis, calling these victims of Hamas collaborators, even though we do know that 3,500 Gazans did participate in the invasion, mass rape, torture, and kidnapping of Israelis. But having said that, right now, we don't hear, as you said very well, any outrage or public condemnation by the United States or the Western Alliance, Europe, or any other country against these summary executions, mass murder of Gazans.
And again, this reminds me, Dan, of 2007. And of the summer of 2007, history keeps repeating itself.
This is when 2007, when the PLO, when the Palestinian Authority under Fatah control in Gaza was summarily booted out, a putsch by
Hamas. And back then, Hamas was carrying out public executions. They were throwing some people from the rooftops. They dragged some of the Fatah people to the streets and lynched them. They even burned one guy's body in front of people. This is just and back then, again, we did not hear or see very strong reactions from the international community. And the silence of the international community allowed Hamas since 2007 to rule Gaza with an iron fist. No one really cared. The international community cares only when Israel is involved or when you can put the blame on Israel. But what we are witnessing right now is double standards on behalf of the international community. All those who were condemning Israel over the past 2 years are suddenly silent. Some of them, by the way, are also endorsing Hamas's narrative or claims that these are collaborators. They should be, asking what due process was there? Were these people put on trial? Where is the evidence? But no one is asking. We are seeing Hamas return to power. We are seeing Hamas reassert control over the areas that the IDF withdrew from. And this sends a message to other Arabs and to the Palestinian Authority. Why should we go there? If Hamas is still there, who wants to confront these people?
Absolutely. This is a major deterrent move by Hamas that has no intention of disarming, no intention of demilitarizing, no intention of de-radicalizing, no intention of allowing this international coalition of powers, the United States, some with the assistance of former Prime Minister Tony Blair as the prospective governor of Gaza, together with Middle Eastern countries that are still unnamed, that are supposed to constitute an international security force and an interim government. All of this, Hamas is already working very, very strategically, I must say, with a tremendous cognitive warfare plans behind this mass murder campaign to prevent everything. Now, allow me just to say one quick point to go back a step. I think it is our view that the hostage deal was an opportunity to bring everyone home in one fell swoop, certainly everyone alive still, and they did come back alive. This was also Hamas's strategy. So it wasn't, at this moment, we cannot say it was a total victory. This was a momentary respite. It was an exchange of innocent hostages for mass murdering terrorists, 250 of them life sentence terrorists in Israeli prisons, and another 1,700 Palestinian security prisoners that were released. But Israel really took an opportunity to bring back the live hostages because, from Israel's point of view, it allowed Israel to regain a certain military leverage. It is in control of well over 50% of the Gaza Strip. It right now has strategic depth and defensible borders by being deep inside Gaza, even on that yellow line. Israel also strengthened very even more its relationship with President Trump, because President Trump wanted this to happen. There are also regional carrots involved here. We are hearing reports that Minister Ron Dermer is in very close touch with a number of candidates for normalization. And of course, the eye on the prize, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia needed this particular 20-point plan to happen in order to reconsider normalizing with Israel. So there is a whole regional aspect here that President Trump is driving, what I call his economic warrior plan to stabilize and cause prosperity across the Middle East. And he wanted to get rid of what he called the pain in the neck, which was, from his point of view, a tactical pain in the neck for the Middle East, which was Gaza. Now we come back to where we are today, after having said Israel needed to do that deal. Hamas also wanted to do that deal in order to bring it to where it is today, stalling for time, and in a way trying to corner Israel and using its own Arab partners, Turkey, Qatar, even Iran in the wings, and others, in order to not only bide for time, but attempt to corner Israel, that very well may have to use military force, because, as you've said on this program, there is no other way to clear out Gaza other than Israeli military action, and the voluntary, encouraged, motivated, incentivized humanitarian relocation of the majority of Gazan citizens to third countries, so that it would only be Hamas left in the Strip. Hamas can be that way defeated, destroyed, and potentially $60, $70, $80 billion to rebuild Gaza, but only without the mass majority of people there.
2 points here, Dan, that our viewers need to take into consideration. Number one, what is Hamas's strategy right now? Their strategy is to maintain their military capabilities inside Gaza, to maintain some kind of a security presence, probably after rebranding. They might establish a new militia or a new security force, call it another name, and then say, oh, this is not Azzeddin al-Qassam, this is the new Palestinian police force. Hamas is ready is prepared to allow a technocratic government of so-called independence into Gaza, but that does not mean Hamas is willing to relinquish security control over Gaza. That's number one.
Meaning they'll maintain control through those organizations.
They want to create the Lebanon model, the Hezbollah model, where you have a government and then you have, a state within a state. You have Hezbollah, backed by Iran, actually serving, as a parallel state inside Lebanon. This is exactly what Hamas is seeking right now. And it looks, the way things are moving, it looks that, the international community is going along with this, is almost accepting it. No one is calling out Hamas security forces that are deployed throughout the West Bank, throughout the Gaza Strip, and that are rounding up people, executing them, and torturing them publicly. So Hamas feels that it has a green light from the international community, and specifically from President Trump, to continue with its crimes first against Palestinians and to remain in power in Gaza. Now, listen very carefully again to what Hamas is saying. Hamas is saying, we will hand over our weapons only to a Palestinian party. Or after a Palestinian state is established. Now, which Palestinian party are they going to hand it over to? Is Hamas going to hand its weapons over to the Palestinian Authority, over the dead bodies of the Palestinian Authority? Hamas, if it's going to hand over any weapons to any Palestinian group, it will be to Islamic Jihad or the Popular Resistance factions, or one of these, terrorist groups inside Gaza. So this is a point that we need to also look at. The other point I wanted to mention was the involvement of Qatar and Turkey. We see that so far, and I hope I'm wrong, but they seem to be leading the effort to stabilize Gaza or reconstruct Gaza. In the first days after the ceasefire, we saw bulldozers with Qatari flags inside Gaza. We also heard about a Turkish security mission. I can't remember.
One that's on the ground. Gaza.
Yeah, coming. Now, look, I mean, this worries me because I prefer to see the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and others in Gaza. But these two countries, we all know, they are sponsors of the Muslim Brotherhood. They have openly supported Hamas, and this gives the impression that we have gone back to square one. If you're bringing Qatar back into Gaza, that means what have you achieved? So this is something that we need to look at, and the Trump administration and others must insist that a party force or other parties be involved. Don't leave it to the Qataris and the Turks, because that's bad. That will not bring about de-radicalization. That will not bring about radical pragmatism. That will actually boost jihad against Israel. These two countries, through their rhetoric, through their actions, are very anti-Israel. They are openly affiliated and aligned with Islamist groups. And this is something that will bring more extremism into Gaza, their heavy involvement in Gaza.
We have to look at the Turkish and Qatari influence here as part of a regional power struggle that on the one hand you have Saudi, America, the Gulf states, and on the other hand you have, Qatar, as our viewers may remember, was completely sent out to the woodshed and isolated for 4 years from 2017 to 2021, led by Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Arab League. They were expelled, suspended.
Even President Trump came out in public against them. In a statement he made, I think it was in 2016, I saw it, it's circulating. You see, he's accusing Qatar of supporting terrorism, and extremism and things like that. Has Qatar really changed over the years? I don't think so. Qatar is the same Qatar, by the way. They're not going to change their ideology just to appease Trump. They know that anyway, Trump will be gone in 3 years. And Hamas and Qatar and Turkey will stay. And this is something that, the Trump administration and others need to pay attention to. If things continue as they are right now in Gaza, and we haven't even completed phase 1, by the way, of the Trump.
Yeah, the bodies, there are many bodies that Hamas has not returned. Israeli security officials are convinced that Hamas is playing games. Once again, not that you and I are surprised. We expected this to happen. Because this ultimately is a Hamas leverage game. Remember,
I used to call it Hamas's insurance policy.
They
will always hold on to some bodies, 3, 4, maybe 10, as an insurance policy that, give us more time. We need to search for for them. We need just give us, more bulldozers. We need heavy equipment. Give us more humanitarian aid. They will try to win time. This is a well-known Hamas tactic. It's not new, by the way. Ask the Palestinian Authority, ask other Arabs who dealt with Hamas. They know Hamas very well. So if we haven't even achieved phase 1 of the Trump deal, can you imagine what's going to happen when we start talking about an international stabilization force in Gaza? Can you imagine what will happen when we talk about disarmament of Hamas in Gaza? Can you imagine what will happen when we talk about bringing a new government into Gaza? Hamas is already saying, we will not accept any non-Palestinian party, which is saying no to Tony Blair, no to international experts.
No to Saudi Arabia, no to the Bahrainis, no to the Emiratis,
and no to President Trump, who's supposed to head the board. I mean, I think it's called the Board of Peace.
Yeah, the Board of Peace, and he's the chairman.
Yeah, he's a chairman. So the chairman should call them out and say, "What do you mean? I'm the chairman. I'm in charge over here." But Hamas, you need to listen very carefully to what Hamas is saying in Arabic. And I don't know who is feeding the Americans and the Europeans about Hamas's positions, but they need to pay attention to what Hamas is saying in Arabic. And in Arabic, it sounds completely different from the idea that they have about Hamas and about Hamas's intentions and future plans in Gaza.
Yeah. Khalid, part of this development I would call Hamas's ghost strategy. The ghost strategy means they have taken off their military outfits, and they are now becoming Armani terrorists in civilian designer clothing. You see them walking the streets of Gaza. They've rebranded themselves as the Gaza Security Force or the Security Force of Gaza. And you see many photographs by international journalists showing them peacefully standing as if they're sort of traffic cops at major intersections in Gaza City, guarding the people of Gaza, as a new refashioned, rebranded force. But what they are doing, besides assassinating political opponents, is to operate through their own proxies behind the scenes that have lots of weapons, lots of ammunition, and lots of influence, neighborhood by neighborhood. And they are stalling for time, even months, while they rebuild, resupply their forces. And therefore, it is critical that the West not move forward and advance anywhere towards rehabilitation and rebuilding of Gaza unless this Hamas strategy is outed and that they are defeated and eliminated from the scene. There is no possible way. The irony or the paradox here is that Hamas also wants to delay, even though they want the rehabilitation and the rebuilding of Gaza, but right now they want months and months to rehabilitate themselves. And funny enough, they recognize that that Trump, who said the other day, right after the release of the hostages and the recovery of the hostages, that stage 2 begins now. So on the one hand, Israel needs to leverage the momentum in order not to lose President Trump's attention and commitment in forcing Hamas to try to adhere and carry out some of the 19 points of the plan, which we've just now said is practically impossible. And at the same time, Hamas is doing everything it can to stall for time. So this really does, in a sense, bring us back to October 6th. Even though Israel has a better military position, we did receive our living hostages back. We do not have nearly all of the murdered hostages back. This is exactly where Hamas wants its enemy to be contained.
It's important then for Hamas to show that Israel failed in achieving
total victory.
2 of its goals. Yeah. Number 1, to remove Hamas from power, and number 2, to destroy Hamas's military capabilities. So when you see 10 or 15 or 20 Hamas terrorists in uniforms on the streets of Gaza, that aims to send a message to the world and to the Palestinians. You see, Hamas is still here. Israel did not achieve its goal. When Hamas says, I want to contribute to the technocratic government that is coming into Gaza, and I need to approve its members, Hamas is actually saying attempts to exclude us from governing or governance of Gaza in the day after the war have failed. And this is where the Trump administration especially needs to call them out. Sooner or later, the Trump administration will discover the deception of Hamas. They will discover the double talk, and they will discover the real intentions of Hamas. The real or the true intentions of Hamas are to remain in power and to hold on to their military capabilities and to rebuild them. So the Trump administration and the Europeans and the Arabs involved in this whole process, they need to ask themselves the following question. Are we headed towards rebuilding Gaza or rehabilitating and rebuilding Hamas? And this is a very important question, and there needs to be a line drawn between these two realities.
President Trump, who does not want to be seen in any way as a sucker or naive, will continue his, let's call him determined or even pugnacious declarations. But at the same time, I think that Israel and the West have placed themselves in a very, very difficult position in which Israel is going to most probably have to take military action in order to achieve its goal, and it will have to insist that Jared Kushner and President Trump give them ironclad commitments, backing, declarations, and even I would say not 200 troops, but 20,000 American troops. If we saw 20,000 American troops in Gaza setting up a system, I think that will send a very strong message to all of the partners in the way that President Trump, in his own declarative military way,
or even an Arab force. What about an Arab force?
I don't see any Arab force that will confront the Hamas
Of course not. I'm just asking, rhetorically.
Where are the Arabs?
Yeah, where are the Arabs?
Why don't they tell us?
Why do we need to bring American troops to Gaza?
And what is the answer? Because it's an important cultural question.
The answer is that, some Arabs don't really care about the Palestinians other than lip service. They don't offer them any help. They see the Palestinians as troublemakers, as people who would stab you in the back. They keep mentioning Palestinian support for Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait as a very good example of Palestinian betrayal. They also keep referring to Palestinians' involvement in stirring up chaos and civil war in some Arab countries, Jordan, later Lebanon. There's total mistrust of Palestinian leadership, by the way, whether it's the Palestinian Authority or Hamas. Many Arabs, or I would say the Arab governments, more than the Arab people, they don't relate to the Palestinian leadership seriously. They see them as, very corrupt people who only care about their own interests, people who have repeatedly promised to failed to fulfill their promises of implementing reform and democracy for the Palestinians. So the Arabs don't really want to be involved then. The Arabs, in other words, want Gaza and the Palestinians to be Israel's problem. We didn't see Egypt open its borders during the war to at least allow some of these Palestinians to come in temporarily. Okay, they opened up, at the beginning to people who bribed their way out.
$10,000 a head, and they got nearly 100,000 Gazans figured out how to pay $5,000 to $10,000 a head to get.
I personally know many people from Gaza who paid tens of thousands of dollars to leave, but the poor people, the displaced people, never had a chance to leave Gaza, to move at least temporarily to Sinai or to any other place. We saw, the Egyptians seal the border with Gaza. We saw very strong statements against Trump's Riviera plan or the relocation plan. I didn't see Qatar, by the way, absorb, or even offer to absorb 10,000, 15,000 Palestinians, even on a temporary basis. Saudi Arabia, I didn't see.
So this is how Trump, who understood what Khaled Abu Toameh is now saying, the way he was able to coalesce this, army of a civilian agreement of the willing, if you will, in order to get them to sign on the dotted line. Is it basically what we are witnessing today? Is the attempted implementation of an outline that really should be called the Arab Gulf Plan, not the Trump Riviera Plan. And that's where Trump, this was, you could argue the genius of the plan is that it actually got, enemies within the Arab Muslim world, whether, Qatar and Turkey on the one hand, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf on the other, Oman, Azerbaijan, and others to sign on to this plan. When many of those people themselves hate one another, but the fact that it moved away from the Riviera focus of the plan to sort of the Arab Gulf focus, to use a metaphor, of the plan, is what got everyone on the same page. And Israel went along with it. Prime Minister Netanyahu, understanding that this was the one shot to get everyone back in one fell swoop, to leverage up Israel's position militarily in the event that we have to go on a full-scale attack.
And the Arab leaders, out of politeness, they're not going to say no to Trump. So you say yes. And, you make declarations about reconstructing Gaza, about, establishing a new government for the Palestinians, about helping the Palestinians. You make all these statements, but we've seen such similar statements from the Arab leaders in the past. most of these statements remained ink on paper. They were never, they never materialized. They never, came into fruition. The Palestinians did not see the fruits. The Palestinians actually saw more financial aid from Europeans and from the U.S. than they did from their Arab brethren. So what we are seeing now is, while the Arabs have been trying to distance themselves from the Palestinian issue, we see Trump dragging them back towards the Palestinian issue, towards the Palestinian quagmire, the Gaza crisis, and they are doing it reluctantly. They're saying, okay, we don't want to say no to this man. He's a man with good intentions, Trump. So let's go with it. And, let's see. You can always rely on the Palestinians, by the way, to foil any reconstruction attempt. You will see Hamas refusing to disarm. You will see Hamas refusing to give up power. You will see more Hamas crimes against Palestinians. You will see the Palestinian Authority afraid to go to Gaza. And this will gradually, convince the Americans and all the well-meaning people, by the way, in the West, that the real problem remains Palestinian leadership, radicalization among Palestinians, the indoctrination. There are core issues that have not been addressed yet. An entire generation of Palestinians has been raised on the glorification of jihad, holy war, death to Israel, death to America. I can't find one Palestinian who recognizes Israel as the homeland of the Jewish people. I can't find one Palestinian who believes in Jewish, or maybe you can find probably 3 or 4. Let's not exaggerate, but there are a number. But the overwhelming majority of the Palestinians don't even believe in Jewish history. They don't believe in any Jewish link to this land, in any link, religious, emotional attachment to this land for the Jews. And these are issues that are very important, because this is what delegitimizes Israel in the eyes of many Palestinians, especially the young generation. And when all these kids on the streets of Gaza, they stand there in a circle and watch these public executions, and they cheer and they chant Allahu Akbar, is this a de-radicalization that the Trump administration is talking about? This is actually a continuation of the indoctrination. This is sending a message to these young kids who are invited to watch these public executions that this is the only path, for jihad. This is the only path to liberate all of Palestine and eliminate Israel.
So where do we go from here? I'm asking rhetorically. It seems that the possibility of Israel and the West arming, supplying local families, clans, and tribes, and there are hundreds, not just the Dagmush family, not just the Abu Shabab clan, but there are, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because you're the reigning expert here on Hamas, but there are scores, if not hundreds, of families, clans, and tribes in Gaza that completely reject Hamas and are missing Western backing. They're missing the assistance that they require to defend themselves.
Why not form a coalition of armed forces, armed forces, Palestinian armed forces, European armed forces, send them to Gaza to finish this whole thing off, to dismantle Hamas by force, to remove Hamas from power, to impose law and order. This is the only way. If they are not willing to do it, someone else will have to do it. And we all know that this someone else is Israel. In 1991, the U.S. formed a coalition of Arab nations
against Iraq
to liberate Kuwait. There was a coalition to fight Al-Qaeda. There was an international coalition with Arab participation to fight ISIS, to fight against jihadis in Syria. Why don't they do the same thing in Gaza? Hamas is much smaller than Saddam Hussein's army. Hamas is much smaller than Hezbollah, than ISIS, than Al-Qaeda. So why is there reluctance when it comes to Gaza and the Palestinians? This is the best way to help the Palestinians, by the way. But sitting, on the side and watching Hamas as they are executing people, this is not only about murdering or executing people. This is about sending a message to the entire Palestinian population and the Arab and the Muslim Islamic masses. Look who's in control. This is victory. When they say we are killing Israeli suspected collaborators with Israel, they're actually telling Mahmoud Abbas and other Arabs, if you dare to collaborate with Israel, this is what's going to happen to you. So this is a very powerful message that these executions send.
You know, Khalid, this is a great way to cap the program, to say in Arabic, dir balak, that you should be warned.
Beware.
Beware. And in Latin, they say caveat emptor, may the buyer beware. And in English, we say be cautious, verify, and move in the right direction, but with tremendous caution and tremendous suspicion towards what is unfolding in Gaza, because this war, regretfully, is far from over.
We need to be very realistic. We need to open our eyes, and we need to watch very carefully what is being said and what is happening on the ground. That's the only way to deal with this situation. If we continue to cover our heads or our eyes and bury our heads in the sand, this is not going to work. This will embolden the jihadis, Hamas, and all these other groups.
This is one of the reasons why, and I would just say from a policy standpoint, we at the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, having worked together on policy issues, are going to bring these policy and strategic challenges to the United States, to decision makers in the administration, to Congress, to the media, to influencers, because the West needs to be on the same page as Israel and Israel's friends.
This is the right time, because we are at a crossroads where everyone's watching and everyone wants to know, where are we headed? And this is the right time for us to try and influence and educate people about what is really happening.
Absolutely, Khalid. Thank you ever so much for this really, in a way, startling and stunning analysis of where we are and where we're going. And again, never a dull moment in the ancient and unstable and unpredictable Middle East. Al-Shaq, Al-Asad Lana, our Middle East. Thank you so much, Khalid Awatami.
Thank you, Dan.